Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story. Okay, be me, record an episode in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3 for your tutorial series for quite a while, and then close the game and realize that you didn't save. That's very much me. And then you repair all that and record another episode, and then it turns out that the headset you were using is finally dead. And this actually kind of made me cry inside, because this means that my favorite headset that I've been using for all of these Let's Plays for over a year now is now officially dead. It's almost been dead before, but it's officially dead now. But I do have some good news as well, because also the quality of the video is really bad. Something happened to OBS as well, so everything is going wrong. But as you could see, I did change the color of the sidewalks over there, so that's actually something good. And that's a good message that I want to spread, because I had to repair things, and on accident, I chose to use the wrong color, and then it turned out that that color actually looked very good. So that's really awesome. So sometimes things like that can also be a great thing. So that's really cool. Now, what I want to cover in this episode, and I haven't even said this yet, but since my headset died, I am actually talking over this video, so it's not live. So I'm sorry if it doesn't exactly match up with what's going on in the video. But what I want to talk about this time is some terra painting and foliage. Now you could see that I turned the grid off, and that's actually a very important thing when it comes to terra painting and foliage, since I normally only say that you have to at all times turn the grid on. I would say that for terra painting and foliage you should turn the grid off, really. It just helps making things look, well, you can pretty much see what everything is going to look like, and it really helps if you just turn the grid off. Of course, for buildings and stuff like that, it doesn't really, but in this case, it's an exception. But basically, I'm going to start off with the terra painting, and I'm going to do the infamous method of the chessboard pattern, and this is actually one of the worst things probably when it comes to terra painting, but I just love the way that this looks. So basically the idea is, and I think I've covered this before also in a tutorial, but I do want to talk about this yet again because it's a very important thing and it can really help make things look so much better. You take this grass texture or anything you like, really, it doesn't really matter, and then you start making a pattern like this with rocks or anything else that you really like, and then you start infilling the middle squares with other things. Now what's happening over here is that you get the two textures and they start mixing. So as you can see, you get the dark, rocky, rough rock texture, and it's mixing with the grass texture, and in the end you get a somewhat darker grass texture that I just really love this. This is probably one of the best things in Rollercoaster Tycoon 3, really. When I just found out about this, holy shit, my life had been a lie up to that point. I felt like I was reborn, basically. So this is awesome, really. And but as you can see, this is also quite annoying, well, since you do have to, well, basically fill all those squares one by one, and it does take a lot of time and, well, a lot of effort as well, and yeah, that's somewhat of a nuisance when you look at it that way. But really, the result is so amazing that I would recommend it either way, unless you're bored or you don't want to do it, or you just don't like the result. But I do, so I really love this method, and I pretty much use it all the time, as long as I can, as long as I don't forget it, because if you know me, you know that I forget pretty much everything in my life ever. And what I'm doing at this point is, when it comes to mixing textures, what you can do is just mix the same two textures everywhere, but it works the best if you kind of mix different things in here and there. So I decided to just go with the rock and the grass and mix in some random light rock and random sand textures, and in the end that looks pretty awesome. And now there's something, as you can see, I'm kind of doing that around the roller coaster. It has no specific real idea behind it, though I must say that I've kind of like seen that when it comes to roller coasters, and especially the ground underneath the track, people just like to place sand over there. I don't know exactly why or how all of that happened, and it's not entirely realistic because not all of the real life roller coasters do that, but within the RCT3 community so many people do that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. I do it as well, really. I'm very guilty of doing that, but it's just something that I found it looks pretty cool, and many people do it and it works. So really, it's not as much as a rant about this as it is a tip on people to kind of do that, because if you don't really know what to do with your terraforming, it can always be a great idea to just kind of place some sand underneath the track. It's pretty cool. And as you can see now, it takes quite a lot of time to do all that nitpicking and adding little sand things everywhere. Basically, at this point, I was talking about this, and I can barely hear myself. I should have turned on my volume, really, because basically what happened to my microphone, my voice just came out very weird and muffled in a way, and I can barely hear myself talk. Like, it's not just a bad quality, I can barely hear it, so it's gone altogether, so I can't really use that anymore. But anyway, I'm rambling. The thing with this was that oh god, I forgot what I wanted to say. Oh damn it. Well, no, basically the commentary at this point was pretty much me saying, okay, I'm gonna place grass here. Okay, I'm gonna place sand here. Okay, I'm gonna place some rocks here. Oh, hey, this is pretty cool. And in hindsight, it was probably not the best commentary, though. I still felt like it was good commentary. Also, you can see that I just added some random grass over there. And yeah, because mixing normal textures with these mixed textures is also something that you can do. So it's pretty much mixception at this point. So basically what this means is that sometimes it just works to mix in some normal textures without having to use that whole checkerboard thingy, and like that. So you can create some contrast between the more darker sand and the lighter sand, and add some grass. Add some the darker grass and the lighter grass, and add some sand. Basically, I jumbled everything up, and at this point you can kind of see it all coming together. You can kind of see the grass and the sand and the way it all behaves. And basically what I'm doing at this point is just placing sand underneath the paths. Just like doing this because normally around paths you have like some sand or soil or stuff like that, and it's not entirely all of it is grass. So if there's any place where you want to have sand, it's around buildings, around paths, underneath tracks and stuff like that. That's basically how it works. And once again, this would have been more me rambling about placing rocks and grass, and probably rambling about random things in life, which I probably forgot at this point anyway, so screw that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this. It's really all I still need to do at this point is just kind of finish that. Of course, I did experiment a bit with the textures at that point, and then felt like, no, I don't want to use that dark sand, dark grass. How do I keep messing that up? How do I do that? Seriously. And I just felt like I kind of wanted to do this as well. I didn't want to make the area in which I'm going to work too big, but I kind of wanted to do this to show that there are also other ways to do this, because I've been using the rocks up until this point, and you can also use the asphalt, and it's pretty cool. And basically the way this works is you can kind of predict it. Yeah, and your texture is going to be just a little bit darker, but it's going to be less rough, so you're not going to have that rough rock texture. So it works in a nice way, very different way, and sometimes it also works better for other climates or other types of ground. But really, you can use the rocks and to get that nice rough feel and not get your sand to be too dark. But you can also use the asphalt to get a really nice dark, almost Siberian forest, if it weren't for the fact that it'd be covered with snow. That's a bad example. I don't know, just random forests in Europe or something like that. That's basically how it works when you have all the pine trees and spruces and all that. And spruce is a pine tree, isn't it? And but yeah, that's basically. I keep just rambling on about things. That's because I'm doing kind of the same thing all in this episode. I can pretty much say what I've done until this point in just a couple of words. Just use that technique and just kind of experiment and mess around with it. That's basically how it works. Now, I also wanted to cover foliage, also because I kind of promised that I would do it. So, well, here you go. Foliage by me. So, I kind of needed to look around and see what kind of sets I should use, and really I didn't really have a clue, honestly. This is always something in which you kind of have to, at least I do, so don't blame me, kind of have to look around and kind of look at sets and see what you like, kind of determine whatever. What was I doing at this point? Basically, I'm just okay, so I finally opened the set, and it's spices trees. And I know that I'm not going to place anything with this, so get out. Basically, I could talk about this for a second. Spices Trees is a pack that I really love, but I feel like it's not tropical enough, and it doesn't really fit the general vibe. And atmosphere of this coaster. So I decided to go with Asian Sensation because it does kind of have that tropical-ish feel in it without having to go tropical B&M spam palm trees everywhere and dubstep music feel, and kind of decided to go with that, and then decided to not go with that and open StationJim's Gardening 2 because StationJim's Gardening 2 is the best thing since sliced bread. It's amazing, it is the best, it is the king of foliage, it is StationJim's Gardening 2. And it's got the white beams, it's got everything, it's got all the amazing things, and so I decided to just use that. And as you can see, this is a pretty cool tree. It's also a set that's somewhat underused. It's relatively new, and it had that little fan when it just came out that everybody used it, but it's still kind of underused. And really, it's even though it's been praised and is basically godly over at Shy Guy's World, it's not used that extremely often for how good it is. So really, if I'd recommend any foliage set, I'd recommend this, because I would also recommend N7 sets, and I could praise N7 for days, but everybody's already using that, so there's no point in really doing that. All I can really do is just place the things and put links to it, and you all know what's going on. But also something that I kind of wanted to address about this, because you can see that I'm basically taking 10 hours to place 3 trees, and you'd be like, Silverette, what are you doing? This is not efficient. And basically what I wanted to say about that is what I usually say is do ground shrubbery first and then place trees. What I'd say in this case is do the trees first, make sure that you get them exactly on the position where you want them, and then do the ground shrubbery like I'm doing right now. Now the point of this is that first you kind of get your general layout, kind of come to terms with the way that you're building things, and then start doing the smaller things. And it doesn't really matter, because one of the main reasons why you're actually doing the ground shrubbery first, or at least why I would recommend you to do that, and why pretty much all of the people in the RCT3 community do that, is because it's easier for one important reason, that if you place loads of trees and then you want to do ground shrubbery, you can't see the damn ground because there's trees everywhere. So you do the ground shrubbery first, and then you kind of know what to do and where to go, and what kind of forest you're creating and what kind of foliage you want. Also, you're kind of building up from small foliage to bigger ones. But since this is just a very small area, and I kind of just want to have a few trees surrounded by small bushes and stuff like that, it's a better idea to place the trees first. So what I'd say, if you're creating a forest or just doing foliage in general on a roller coaster, do the ground shrubbery first. Don't make it too hard on yourself. Just do the ground shrubbery and then move on to the trees later on. But if you're creating a very small scene and you want everything to be right, like I am doing with this queue, you should definitely do the trees first, and then do as I'm doing right now. Just kind of look around and kind of experiment with bushes, and it really give it some time. I know that some people are like, you shouldn't do that, just place things. It's really important that you kind of look around and look at bushes and see what you really like. For example, I just had to place a few bushes and then decide, no, this is not going to be it. And then you can really decide that you want to create an entirely different look. And at that point, I felt like, okay, I'm going to use these things. I'm going to use the crepe myrtles, and what's so great about these things is that they've got great textures and they go so well with this general theme and all the other foliage. So I just decided to go with this instead, after a bit of experimenting. And as you can see, I'm kind of lowering these things because they're kind of like bushes, trees, and I don't want that, so I kind of lower them. Speaking of lowering trees, it's something that I've been doing for years, and I'm somewhat surprised that nobody's actually been negative to me about that. It's the fact that I lower trees to make them look like bushes. Really, it's I don't know if it's a bad thing or a good thing. I just find it a good thing because it looks good in most cases, so I guess I'm going to give that as a tip as well. Use trees and lower them to make bushes, and that's basically how that works. I just realized that the quality of this video came out really weird, in a sense that as long as I hold the camera still, the quality is really good, but then as soon as I turn around, it's 240p. This is not good. I need to work on this, definitely, because the quality itself is not that bad. It just gets pixelated when I turn. Oh god, this is not good. Anyway, I'm rambling again. Basically what I'm doing at this point is just taking some multiple bushes that you really like and just kind of mess with them. I know I could have done a more well, specific approach to the commentary. But the thing is that if you do too specific, if I really say, okay, you do this, do that, do this and that, basically, people are gonna copy me, and that's not the point of a tutorial. You shouldn't copy what's going on, only if you really want to learn. But the thing is that you should kind of learn to do things yourself. See, that's an important thing of tutorial. It should teach you how to do things yourself, and it should not teach you how to do things that others have thought of for you. So this is kind of a general approach that will work with anything, really. Doesn't matter if you're doing a more northern way of doing things than I am right now. Just pick different trees, but you can do the same thing. Just kind of place, for example, a couple of spruces in the middle and some smaller European bushes around that, and really it works in the same way, just with a different climate, a different theme, etc. Now at this point I'm still trying to experiment with bushes and see what I like. And also one important thing is I had to look at the foliage that I placed earlier and realized that I kind of forgot about a few bushes and kind of wanted to place those things as well. So that's what I did with these knotweeds. So that's also something that I'd say, if you are doing foliage and you've already done foliage earlier on in your park, then definitely look at that foliage and kind of copy it. I wouldn't say that you'd have to do the entire way, just the same way of doing the foliage all around the park. Actually, I'd say the opposite. Just try to mix it up a little. But you do kind of need to look at things and make sure that it all looks somewhat the same, because just in general that works well. And at this point I felt like I need some small bushes, some small little things on the ground before I move into the grass, because grass, you will see at the end that grass is the magic thing. It's the most magical thing when it comes to foliage, really. But I'll say that later. I'll get to that bit in a moment. And at that point I looked at those things over there and I realized, hold on, those aren't Japanese, whatever they are, they're European gingers. So I had to place the European gingers. Doesn't really matter that I place those other ones though, because one, nobody's gonna notice, and two, nature just does things like that. It mixes up a little. Also, speaking of nature, there are a few things that I want to rant about, and it's also something that I really need to say, and some people kind of forget. And first of all, you shouldn't strive for perfect nature. Why? Because theme parks aren't nature, obviously. Of course your park is going to have to look somewhat natural, because theme parks do that too. And I don't know why I was just spinning around with that thing, but you don't need to make it entirely natural, because theme parks don't do that. The way that theme parks make their foliage isn't natural. It's meant to look good, and you should keep that in mind while doing your foliage. You don't have to not place a tree simply because you think, oh well, this isn't natural. It doesn't really matter, as long as it looks good and as long as it can be maintained. And that's my second point. Basically, you need to make sure that your foliage can be maintained by your people in your park. So if you have flowers, don't put them in the middle of nowhere where nobody can water them. And I don't know if I've said this before, I probably have, and I can go on about this forever, but as long as people keep messing this up, well, okay, messing it up is a big word, but as long as people keep doing this, and if you really strive for a realistic park, you shouldn't do this, because simple, you kind of need people to water your plants, and so you should think about that. Now basically at this point, and this is a very important stage, and I didn't say very enough, because this is very important and you should pay attention. You should pay very close attention. Beach fence set. I was almost going to say beach grass. I was almost going to say it, simply because nobody uses this set for the beach fence. Nobody does. Everybody just think like fuck off fence and moves on to the grass, because the grass is the great part about this set and why everybody loves it. Basically, you have no grass in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, but beach grass is your #1 best friend and best alternative for real grass. Basically, what you have to do, just like with normal foliage, just kind of place it around in clusters, kind of like that, and make sure that you kind of place it around other shrubs as well and in bare areas, and kind of mix it up with the medium and the very small ones, As you can see, I also placed those big ones, but those big ones don't really work out. They're way too big. They can work out on an actual beach or in a swamp where you're trying to have a very small little pond or something, and you kind of want to have some nice big grass on the sides, or maybe even in the middle of the pond, because that happens sometimes. Then that's cool. But in most other cases, I would go with medium and small, and not the large ones, simply because they're too big and they're gonna be bigger than just normal shrubs and flowers, and that's not gonna look very good. But as you can see, just kind of place those medium ones, especially those medium ones, around other shrubbery, and you can really see that the shrubbery looks more realistic, and it just looks cooler in general. So I can go on about the set for days, basically. It's a great set. It really works. Make sure that you place enough of this grass. Not too much, because you don't want your park to look like, well, a savanna or something like that. But it depends on what climate, and also on your well, personal taste, really. But don't overdo this. But really, you can just kind of look around and see at some point when you're happy about it, then it should be all good. And at this point, I am pretty happy with the grass and the way that this park is looking, so that's pretty good. So I feel like at this point I've pretty much finished everything. There's not really anything to add at this point, I think. No, not really. You can see that just by adding that little bit of foliage and nothing else, it almost looks as if the station itself is already better. As if the building itself has improved in some sense. Well, it hasn't. It's still the same building, but here you can really see the effect of great foliage. I've seen coasters which aren't even that great, which don't even have that great of theming, but with amazing foliage you can make anything look good, and I'm not even kidding. So never ever underestimate the power of foliage. Now at this point I'm just going to quickly add some rocky textures to this little grass over here. I didn't bother to deal with that very annoying technique, simply because even though it works out, I felt like, meh, I don't have the time, nor do I really want to deal with that again. So I just decided to play just a few rocky things. Now you shouldn't do this if you really strive for the best effects, but if you feel like, nah, I don't want to waste my time on anything anymore, or I just want to finish this real quick, then yeah, you can do this. As long as you're kind of used to it, because it does take some time to kind of get used to it and kind of get the hang of where you need to place textures and where you shouldn't place textures, and what kind of textures work well when you mix them. But again, that's also you should kind of experiment with that, because that really works. Now at this point, I don't really do anything new anymore. It's just trying to fix that little ground thing over there and other things. But yeah, basically this is the end of the episode, so thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you've learned something despite the somewhat low quality and me having to record this again, and see you all next time.